Hey, what's up YouTube? It's that time of the week again. It's time to upload another one of my game making journeys. This is going to be a little bit of a longer one than normal, so I want to try and get through this whole game in one go, because I have other bits to follow on from this one as well. With that in mind, let's jump straight to it. As soon as I saw the trailer for this course, I knew it was going to be a cut above the rest of the tutorials I've done before. The game looked legitimately good. The kind of thing you would find on Steam, and not just a facsimile of an old game from days gone by, but a game that could have been released in the current indie crime wave post Super Meat Boy and Braid. The sprites that Benjamin provided were very clean and had really well polished animations and looked like a finished article. Once the player sprites were in, we added some sprites for the dirt that could make the physical structure of each level and create a room for testing. This would be used to check the inputs were being registered correctly and that the artificial gravity we just programmed was not overwhelming or too weak. Too strong, and rather than jump like Mario in a graceful parabola, he'd jump like a cat on a polished surface. Too weak, and he'd just float horribly like Bubsy used to do. This was a big problem with early platforms, which persisted right the way through the heyday of the 2D era. Technically, it's not really gravity. It's just a formula that increases vertical speed as a consistent rate, which reaches a predetermined maximum and then begins to reduce until it becomes a negative value, meaning the player's character will then decrease in height until it collides with solid object, then resets vertical back to 0. It's just gravity. Next up was to make the player animations run as the character moved, and further tweak the input controls to allow for a graduated jump height. We also added a very cool bit of code that allowed for a ledge grab mechanic. A couple of different enemy types were added, and we gave them some very basic logic. The snake would just move back and forth on the same plane, and the bat would try to reduce the distance between themselves and the player. Although there was no collision in place, this room was already starting to take shape. The third enemy type added was a jumping spider. The spider's logic was a little more complicated. He had a longer detection range than the other enemies, but could only move in a predetermined jump. He would then wait for a brief period of time, and then jump again. This could easily result in him getting stuck, but with a bit of clever level design later down the road, I was pretty confident this could be avoided. Now that we had movement and bad guys in place, the next logical step was to add a mainstay of any good platformers: kill or be killed. We added condition-based collision with the enemies so that any contact with them would cause damage to the player, unless the player was falling and the collision happened on the Y-axis. So essentially Mario, but Mario can't ledge grab because he's a feckless cum shedder. Benjamin also provided heart sprites for the health meter and the code to turn them grey after each hit. I should make it clear that Benjamin provided all the code and artwork, and I use the word we for shorthand for Benjamin did it and I copied. We also added a couple of bounce mechanics, one for when the player killed an enemy, allowing for a more flowing experience, and the other was a ridiculously unforgiving damage state, to really rub it in the player's face when they got it wrong. Now we pretty much have a completed game. Everything from here on out is classed as either polish or content. We had a background that scrolled at a different speed to the foregrounds, giving the room some depth. We wrote scripts that would automatically add an edge design to the blocks, and we also created a red particle emitter to activate once the enemies were destroyed, to generate randomised blood splatters, because video game. So that's it for the polish, now on with the content. I'm going to talk to you now about level design. Quite a while. Most normal shit munchers would find this topic one of the most boring and tedious things you could talk about. But if you're still with me for this long, then you're probably as much of a weirdo as I am. And when I say I love level design, I mean I love level design. Some of my favourite videos on YouTube are Mark Brown's Game Maker's Toolkit and Extra Credits Design Club. Check out The Dotted Line, No Compass and Mario 1.1, links in the description below. When done right, games should have an unwritten dialogue between the player and the game maker, which subtly leads the player by the hand and teaches them the mechanics of the game and where to go. When done badly, Ubisoft. Okay, so here we go with one last quick caveat. Again, Heatbeast designed these levels, they're not my designs, they'll come later on. Room 1, you start by facing the direction you need to go, and it's clear that you cannot go in the other direction. The small step down briefly demonstrates the gravity working, and the larger step at the other end makes it impossible to proceed without finding the jump button. There are no enemies or collectibles in this room, so it's a completely safe environment for the player to get to grips with the controls before Room 2. Room 2 is exactly the same as Room 1, but this time it now has an enemy. He's confined by walls on either side, so the player can observe him without being in any danger, and the elevated starting position makes it more likely that the player will accidentally kill the snake without even trying. Room 3 has a mound at the very start with very small ledges for the player to traverse. This makes it highly likely that they will discover the grab mechanic organically without needing any text box obscuring the screen that say things like "Let's slightly shorter the jump and you automatically grab onto a ledge for some wicked parkour action, bro." In fact, the narrow spaces of the ledge make it next to impossible to climb up without grabbing hold of the ledge. We also introduce the second enemy type, again from an elevated starting position, making dealing with the bat much easier than there will be later on in the game. Room 4 is mostly a recap of all the mechanics learned so far, just to make sure that they've been drilled home for the player. Room 5, we introduce the third and final enemy, and again with a bit of very clever level design. The player can see the spider from the offset, but it doesn't move. Only when the player reaches this spot will the spider react. From this spot, the player is completely safe and the spider flies right past. As long as the player doesn't climb out the hole, they're completely safe from attack, and they can watch the spider and get used to how it jumps and the timing of its attack. These first 5 rooms were so well designed by Heatbeast, they really show off just how much time and care was put into these tutorial series. To add yet more polish, it was time for some music and some sound effects. The music used was by MacLeod and is available on his website incomputech.com under the Creative Commons license. The credits are all in the description below, and I highly recommend checking out his website for some truly excellent music which you can be using in whatever game or video you like. Just be sure to credit him, and better yet, slip him a couple of quid. Sound effects were added to the player's movement, with the pitch of the landing sound was randomised so that way it wouldn't get too repetitive. It's all about the little touches. Sound effects were also added to the enemy's death script to make their deaths all the more satisfying. Next on the agenda was the title screen for the game. Benjamin provided the artwork, and I provided the name of my game studio before it changed to Cry Noir. I really should have gone back and changed it, but to be honest I quite like the time capsule nature of this game. To give this game a more complete feel, we included a timer and gems to collect with a counter. These would be tracked throughout the game or would be used to calculate the player's high score, which could be saved for time and memorial. This is where I added my first little touch to the game. During the tutorial, Ben suggested a couple of different ways to calculate the high score, involving either the time or the gems, or a combination of both with a part-time element. I decided to go purely on a gems collected approach, with the time being extensively irrelevant. The score will be calculated by the number of gems the player had left at the end of the game, times by a multiplier. Every time the player died, 10 gems would be removed from the running total. Now that we had enemies, levels, mechanics, high scores, music and collectibles, the only thing missing was a boss. But I think we'll leave that as a surprise for the end of this series. Okay, thanks a lot for watching guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe. As always, there should be another one of these videos coming up within the next week. And there should be some other content coming during the week as well, hopefully. So I shall see you on the flip side. Thank you very much again. Take it easy. Bye bye.